Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Work and Pensions Secretary, Esther McVey, has had to apologise to MPs for giving them misleading information about the Universal Credit Programme. Her errors were revealed when the head of the National Audit Office published a highly critical open letter to her this morning. Some Labour MPs are calling for the minister to resign. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is in Westminster. Gary.
Well, this is a very unusual letter to be written, let alone published. I'm told the National Audit Office is not in the habit of doing letters like this, and it is ticking off a member of the Cabinet for misrepresenting their report in plain vernacular, telling porkies. And what this letter says from the head of the National Audit Office is that the Secretary of State twice, having been told to stop doing it in between, suggested that their report on universal credit did not take into account the impact of recent changes, was out of date. And the National Audit Office say that is wrong. They go on to say in this letter to the Secretary of State that she said 2 days ago the National Audit Office was concerned universal credit is currently rolling out too slowly and needs to continue at a faster rate. Also, the letter says, not correct. Well, if you say things that are not correct and you do it knowingly, you are in breach of the ministerial code. And I think this did send a bit of a flurry round Whitehall. The Secretary of State came to the House of Commons to make what I think could at best be called a partial apology.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while speaking in Parliament in answer to questions on the NAO report into universal credit, I mistakenly said that the NAO had asked for the rollout of universal credit to continue at a faster rate and to be speeded up. In fact, the NAO did not say that, Mr. Speaker, and I want to apologise to you and the House for inadvertently misleading you.
So she's pushing back on some of the accusations. She's certainly not, despite the cries you could hear there in the House of Commons, resigning. There's another complaint in this letter that says she's claiming something as data that proves whether universal credit is working, when all it is a customer survey. This is very unconventional behaviour for a minister. At the moment, we're in a week or two where we're looking at extraordinary ministerial behaviour, bouncing around like pinballs, lack of collective responsibility. Here's another bit for the list.
Well, joining us now is the Labour MP, Ruth George, who's a member of the Work and Pensions Select Committee. Ruth George, it's pretty widely known out in the sort of social work area that this work and pensions reform has not gone at all well. Did you pick the minister up on in the first case?
Well, as soon as the National Audit Office report was published a couple of weeks ago, then we called for the Minister, the Secretary of State, to come and make a statement to the House of Commons. It took her nearly a week to do that. And as your reporter said, when she did that, then she made the gross error of claiming that the report said that universal credit should be rolled out faster rather than what they actually said was slower. This will make a huge difference to millions of people. We've got 10 million adults, almost half of all children, are due to be on universal credit over the next few years. Whether it rolls out fast and the problems aren't put right or more slowly will make a huge difference to millions of families.
But the point I was making in my question, in a way, was it was very widely known in the parts of the economy that are dealing with this change that people were suffering. There were people reporting they were going for a month or more without any kind of benefit at all because the crossover was so slow.
Absolutely, and that's what the National Audit Office report points out. It also references a survey of over 1,000 claimants of universal credit done by the DWP themselves that shows that, yes, there are huge problems at the start of a claim and 20% of people are waiting more than they should for their claim to come through, but there are also 40% in hardship.
What I'm trying to get at is how on earth opposition MPs didn't jump in right away when she made these statements in the first place?
We did jump in straight away. I was amongst the Labour MPs that were asking questions both on the 21st of June and questions to the Minister on Monday. But they're just batted away as if you're hitting against a brick wall with incorrect statements. It's good that the NAO have been able to correct the Secretary of State.
Well, your colleague, the Shadow Secretary of State, has called for her resignation. Are you going to press it?
Absolutely. I think that, as you said, under the ministerial code, if a minister deliberately misleads the House of Commons, then they should forfeit their role that they have. You need the country to have faith in the government that are in charge of such important amounts of money as universal credit. And it's very clear from the National Audit Office's letter that the Secretary of State was well aware of both, not once but twice, was she told that what she was saying was wrong, and yet she persisted. So it's not that it was undeliberate. It seems to have been very deliberately misleading the House.
Well, so what is Labour's position on the actual measure itself? Would it scrap universal credit, or does it think it's a good idea?
On universal credit, we pretty much concur with what the National Audit Office has said, that it's been rolled out to over 1 million people already, so it's very hard to roll back from that, but that there are huge problems with it. 40% of people on the benefit are in hardship and getting into debt. So we should pause it, stop it, sort the problems out. We've said that we'll put an extra £2 billion a year, £10 billion over the course of a parliament into sorting out the financial problems so that people don't suffer as they are doing now.
And very briefly, I mean, how hard are you going to push this call for her resignation?
Well, I hope that the Secretary of State will do the decent thing. We have called on the Speaker to allow a urgent question in the House of Commons tomorrow. And we hope that there we will be able to push exactly what was said over the last couple of weeks, and the fact that a Secretary of State being told by the National Audit Office that her policy is causing serious problems for people has refused to listen to that, and in fact tries to roll it out faster rather than pausing as she should do, and that will cause hardship to more millions of people. It really is a matter of principle.
Ruth George, thank you very much indeed for talking with us. Thank you.
Let's move on to the front page of The Guardian, shall we? Esther McVey
She's in
apologising.
trouble. She was quite unusual for the National Audit Office actually to write an open letter to a minister, effectively upbraiding her for her conduct because she misled Parliament over a fundamental part of the
NAO
Universal
report
credit.
into
the universal credit. She said the NAO were actually saying that they wanted to speed up the rollout of universal credit. Actually, the NAO said the complete reverse. So she's come to the Commons today, she's apologised, sort of.
And said it was a mistake.
And said it was a mistake.
It's not a mistake when you say something that's wrong. The NAO writes to you and tells you not to say that. You say something else that's wrong from the same report. The NAO writes to you and asks for a meeting to explain why you've been wrong. You refuse that meeting and you force one of the country's top statisticians to then go public and say, if I could have had a meeting with you, you wouldn't have had to do
we need to find out what happened here, don't we? Whether she was misled by her own civil servants or...
Labour's right. She's either incompetent, she can't read a report and she cannot present it authoritatively and genuinely to Parliament, or she lied intentionally. And either one is a breach of, of what she should be doing, and potentially a breach of the ministerial code.
She's a very self-assured performer in the Commons normally. She's very good on media, TV and radio. So I suspect the line's going to be she was given duff info by her officials. But if that's not right, the officials will certainly leak about it.
She should have read the report herself.